One of the most common things that I see in eating disorder recovery is a condition like anorexia nervosa or bulimia nervosa switching over to something like orthorexia. Today, we're really going to dig into what constitutes a diagnosis for anorexia or bulimia or orthorexia and why it is really common that we see a transition in our eating disorder recovery to something like orthorexia instead of a full fledged recovery. My name is Sheena, and I'm a registered dietitian that specializes in the care of persons with eating disorders. And if that's something you're interested in learning more about or struggling with, please subscribe to this channel. I drop new episodes every Wednesday. Okay, so let's really dig into the differentiators in these classifications for things like anorexia, bulimia, and orthorexia, and why they tend to switch literally oftentimes as part of the recovery process. So when we're thinking about something like anorexia or bulimia, these two things are generally concentrated on around a fixation with changing the body weight, shape, and size. An individual experiencing anorexia or bulimia is often obsessed with the scale or body checking frequently in other ways, such as looking at themselves in the mirror, pinching their skin, using a measuring tape, or comparing their body to former photos or other individuals. These individuals have a preoccupation the way that their body looks, and a prime contributor to some of these diagnoses is trying to change the body weight, shape, and size. These individuals often do so by extreme measures, such as restricting calories, engaging in compensatory behavior, such as purging their food after they consume a meal, using laxatives, or engaging in excessive physical activity after they have a meal. This would more so fall under that classification of bulimia nervosa. However, at times it can fall under the anorexia nervosa classification as well. These individuals sometimes meet a weight criteria or a weight threshold, which is reached before they technically fall under these classifications of anorexia nervosa or bulimia nervosa. It often involves extreme obsession around how much calories is in a certain food, food rules, or anything that may alter the body weight, shape, and size. Now, this is slightly different than the orthorexia diagnosis. Now, the orthorexia diagnosis is much newer than diagnoses like anorexia nervosa or bulimia nervosa. And it actually technically falls under the OSFED diagnosis, which is other specific feeding and eating disorders. It doesn't have a criteria all of its own, it rather falls under that OSFED diagnosis. Orthorexia is the preoccupation with healthy foods. This is your quote unquote extreme healthy eating. Often happens for individuals when they're feeling like they should avoid certain foods because they are, say, too processed or too calorie dense versus nutrient dense, which means that that food has a very large quantity of calories for the amount that of food that is consumed. They may also avoid certain food groups when we have that orthorexia diagnosis. And while the preoccupation is not primarily on body weight, shape, and size, the important thing to note here is that there are many, many food rules and regulations that also come with the orthorexia diagnosis. Now, what I really want you to consider is that with all of these diagnoses, the orthorexia diagnoses, the bulimia nervosa, the anorexia nervosa, and even things like binge eating disorder, the focus is really on some type of food restriction somewhere. And that's the really, really important thing to know. So while the DSM 5 will categorize these things very, very differently, they all have one thing in common. Even though we are engaging in different behaviors from anorexia nervosa to bulimia nervosa to orthorexia nervosa, they all carry one very, very similar trait, and that is that they revolve around some type of food restriction for whatever reason. So while anorexia and bulimia nervosa tend to be more highly focused on sustaining a very specific body weight, shape, and size, they still are regulated by food rules. So what tends to happen is as a person is trying to, say, weight restore, trying to heal that relationship with food, trying to challenge fear foods, etc., as part of their recovery journey from anorexia and bulimia, they may kind of take on this alter identity of orthorexia nervosa, which is that extreme healthy eating. Now, take note again, all these revolve around food rules and regulation. So when we're thinking about that anorexia, so when we're in recovery from anorexia and bulimia, there is a lot of attention paid getting rid of some of those eating disorder behaviors like calorie counting, food restriction, compensating with exercise for foods eaten, making sure you're getting enough, weight restoration, etc. When an individual fully embraces letting go of those fears around food and allowing their body to gain weight, that is absolutely progress towards their eating disorder recovery. But what happens next is that many individuals will say, "What now? How do I be quote unquote healthy now?" And many individuals will believe one of two things, and that is they've either recovered too far or they can't possibly recover by just choosing those foods that the body desires. There has to be some type of rules and regulations around food and exercise, even if they are not restricting their calories or following some of those old rules from bulimia and anorexia. And what this often leads to is a lot of those orthorexic tendencies. And so many individuals with bulimia nervosa or anorexia nervosa will want to recover by only eating quote unquote healthy foods. An individual may make the justification, well, I'm weight restored. I'm eating enough calories. I'm having 3 meals, 3 snacks a day. I'm meeting my meal plan, etc. But the problem lies in the fact that these individuals are often meeting their meal plan with very, very disordered rules and behaviors on board. And these rules and behaviors on board have transitioned from a complete calorie restriction to change the body weight, shape, and size to an obsession with healthy eating. And we see this very, very frequently. They want to keep some type of rules and regulations on board so they don't spiral completely out of control. And what all eating disorders thrive on is the need for control. So this actually makes perfect sense. And many individuals will come to my office and tell me, well, I'm eating enough calories. I've weight restored. I am fine. But the food noise in their brain is still loud and rampant because they have simply changed their rules. We are no longer going to be preoccupied with body weight, shape, and size. We are now going to be preoccupied with making sure we put the quote unquote right foods into the body. And this is an example of what I would consider recovered enough mentality. We want a relationship with food that feels easy. We can engage with foods that feel good psychologically and physically and emotionally. And if we've got those orthorexic tendencies on board that tell us that we should have the healthiest food at all time, that really is just our eating disorder shifting. So I really do encourage you to seek out the support of a qualified healthcare team, including a doctor, therapist, and a registered dietitian in your journey in recovery. And they can really help you to untangle some of these rules and regulations that you might have around food. If you're interested in working together, definitely check out the link below to schedule an appointment. If you have insurance, you are paying for a dietitian whether you use one or not. So if you found this video helpful for you, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with a friend.